The Montana winter of 1872 sank its teeth deep, snow falling like a widow's tears, heavy and unyielding. It draped the valleys in a shroud, muffling the world until even the pines stood silent, their branches bowed under frost. The wind wailed, a mournful hymn, carrying the scent of pine and peril across the endless white. In this frozen wilderness, Caleb Holt walked alone, a man tethered to the edge of life by little more than duty, and a dog named Shadow. His cabin, a squat sentinel on a wind-scoured ridge, glowed faintly, its chimney smoke curling like a prayer into the iron-gray sky. Caleb was no stranger to loss. His wife, Lila, had been stolen by fever 4 winters past, her laughter fading like a song half-remembered. Now, at 47, his face bore the map of his grief lines etched by wind and sorrow, eyes like storm clouds over the Bitterroot Mountains. He wore a faded wool coat, patched at the elbows, and boots worn thin from pacing the land. His hands, calloused but steady, stacked wood and mended fences, tasks that asked no questions and gave no answers. Shadow, his hound, trailed him, a grizzled shadow limping through the snow. This morning, the air tasted wrong, sharp, acrid, not the clean bite of frost. Caleb froze, reins taut in his gloved hands, as a plume of black smoke clawed the horizon. A wagon train, perhaps, or its ashes. His mule snorted, uneasy. He could turn back, owe no man a thing. But a pang, sharp as a blade, stirred beneath his ribs a memory of Layla's voice, urging him to be more than the cold allowed. He spurred the mule forward, the trail winding through skeletal aspens, each step crunching like a whispered vow. The valley revealed a slaughter. 3 wagons smoldered, their frames charred to blackened bones. Ashes danced in the wind like moths burned alive. A man lay sprawled, snow half claiming his corpse. Another slumped against a shattered wheel, fingers curled like claws. A woman's sapphire shawl, vivid as blood, snagged on a splintered post, flapping like a wounded bird. Caleb's breath caught. Comanche, likely swift, merciless, gone like smoke. His rifle rested heavy in his hands, eyes scanning for movement. Then, a sound, a cough, fragile as a sparrow's wing. He found her by a fallen log, curled tight, a porcelain figure bruised and frostbitten. Her auburn hair clung to her face, her calico dress singed and torn. Her eyes fluttered open emerald, wild with fear, yet piercing, as if she saw through him to the man he'd buried. "Can you move?" he asked, voice low, steady as a hymn. She tried to rise, faltered. He lifted her, gentle as if cradling glass, her weight a feather against his chest. Shadow whined, circling. "We're going home," Caleb murmured, to her, to the dog, to the wind. In the cabin, firelight bathed the rough-hewn walls, the stove's glow a defiant stand against the cold. He laid her on his bed, draped her in quilts patched with Lila's old dresses, and spooned warm broth past her trembling lips. She shivered, teeth chattering like castanets, eyes shut against the world. He asked nothing, though questions burned her accent, her grace. The terror in her gaze spoke of a life far from these wilds. Shadow curled at her feet, a silent guardian. By dusk, she stirred, her voice soft but clear, like a violin's first note after years of silence. "I'm Clara," she said. "Clara Wren. My family. We were headed west. Bandits took everything. Her eyes, green as spring, held secrets she didn't share. Caleb nodded, stirring the fire. "You're safe now." He believed her story no more than he believed the wind. But he knew the weight of hiding. He'd carried it since Lila's grave. She stayed, her strength returning like a river after drought. She swept the plank floor, her movements pained but determined, her borrowed shawl slipping from slender shoulders. Caleb watched, heart stirring, as if the cabin's shadows had begun to dance. Clara wasn't like the saloon girls or homestead wives her hands, though work-worn, bore the elegance of parlors. Her words laced with a cadence foreign to Montana's dust. Yet she chopped wood beside him, her breath clouding in the frost, and laughed when shadow stole a crust from her plate. A laugh that echoed Lila's, sharp and sweet. One evening, as snow lashed the windows, she stood on the porch, wind tugging her skirts. "You saved me, Caleb Holt," she said, voice trembling, not with cold, but truth. He paused, axe buried in a log, breath steaming. "Couldn't leave you to die." Her eyes searched his. Why risk it? He looked onto the hills, where dusk bled purple. Once, someone might have needed saving. Didn't get there in time. Won't make that mistake again. Her face softened, lips parting. And for a moment, the world was only them two souls caught in winter's grip, daring to thaw. Inside, the fire roared, casting golden flickers across the walls. A carved wooden sparrow, Lila's work, sat on the mantel beside a faded sampler. In winter's heart, hope sings soft. Clara traced it with a finger. Your wife's Caleb nodded, throat tight. Lila. She saw beauty where I saw none. Clara's eyes glistened. She was right. Their days wove a fragile tapestry, shared silences, stolen glances, tasks that bound them closer. She mended his shirt, her needle flashing in the lamplight. He taught her to stack wood, chuckling when she cursed in a tongue he didn't know. French, he teased. She froze, then smiled. Something like that. That night, by the hearth, she spoke of a life before ballrooms, gowns, men who spoke of empires while ignoring her heart. I danced to their tunes, she said, but never my own. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees. What's your tune now? Her smile was faint, fierce. Freedom. But freedom, like spring, was hard won. Trouble rode in on a black horse, its rider cloaked in a duster dark as sin. Jasper Kane was no lawman, but his silver-handled revolver and cold blue eyes marked him as a hunter of men and women. He took a room at the trading post, his questions sharp as his blade a woman. European, missing, likely hiding under a false name. Old Bess, the post's keeper, spilled the tale of Caleb's guest, her tongue loosened by Kane's coin. Holt's a good man, she said. Lost his wife. Lives up by Crow's Nest. Kane tipped his hat, left $1 and rode into the snow. He found Caleb outside the post, loading flour onto his mule. Caleb Holt Kane's voice was silk over steel. Caleb turned, hand resting near his rifle. Who's asking Jasper Kane? Looking for a woman. Family's desperate. Might be calling herself something new. Caleb's jaw tightened. If she's with me, she's there by choice. Kane's smile was a snake's. Tell her I came. Tell her she can't hide forever. Caleb stepped past, heart pounding, the weight of Clara's secret heavy as the snow. Back at the cabin, Clara knelt by the woodpile, her breath a white plume. She saw his face and stood, hands trembling. "Who was it man named Kane?" Caleb said. "Says your family sent him." Her face paled, a ghost in the firelight. "He knows. Not everything," Caleb said. "But he'll be back." She sank onto the porch steps, arms around herself. "I can't go back. Caleb, that life, it's a gilded prison." "I'd rather die." He sat beside her, Shadow's head in his lap. "Then we run. South. Maybe Arizona. Start fresh." Her eyes met his. Fierce. Not alone. Never alone? He vowed, and her hand found his. A spark in the cold. They packed under starlight hardtack. Blankets. A map worn at the folds. Clara tucked the carved sparrow into her satchel, its wings a promise. By dawn, they rode out, the cabin a fading shadow. The trail snaked through pines, toward Raven's Pass, a narrow gorge leading south. Snow crunched under hooves, the air sharp as a blade. Clara rode tall, her scarf a defiant banner, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Caleb watched her, heart swelling she was no damsel, but a storm in human form. At the pass's crest, the world unfurled snowfields glittering, mountains jagged against a steel sky. The trail below twisted, treacherous but free. "We'll make it," Clara said, voice steady. Caleb nodded, but Shadow growled, hackles raised, hooves thundered behind. 3 riders burst from the trees, Kane at the lead, flanked by hired guns, their rifles gleaming. "They found us," Caleb hissed. Clara's face hardened. Let them try. The chase was chaos. Hooves pounding, snow spraying, bullets cracking like thunder. Caleb fired, dropping one man, his body a dark smear in the white. Clara rode low, fearless, her horse leaping fallen logs. A shot grazed her sleeve, tearing fabric, but she didn't falter. Raven's Pass loomed, its stone walls a gauntlet. Shadow barked, then yelped, tumbling into the snow, blood blooming on his flank. Caleb roared, dismounting, firing again. Another man fell, but Kane charged, relentless. In the pass's heart, Caleb faced Kane, rifles locked. "She's mine to take," Kane snarled. "She's no one's," Caleb spat, slamming his rifle butt into Kane's chest. They grappled, fists and fury. Snow churned to mud. Kane drew a knife, its blade flashing. Clara appeared, Kane's own pistol in her hands, cocked and steady. "Enough," she said, voice like iron. Kane froze, blood dripping from his lip. "You won't shoot." Her eyes blazed. "I've run from men like you my whole life." "No more," Kane laughed, bitter. "They'll never stop hunting you." "Baroness." Caleb's head snapped up. Baroness Clara didn't flinch. "Let them come. I'm not Elena Voss anymore. I'm Clara Wren, and I choose my path." She lowered the gun, not from fear, but defiance. Kane staggered back, defeated, and limped to his horse. "Others will follow," he warned, then vanished into the storm. Caleb turned to Clara, breath ragged, Baroness. Her smile was sad, radiant. "Elena Voss, once, a name I left behind, like chains." He took her hand, his touch a vow. "You're Clara to me?" They buried Shadow under a pine, Caleb's hands shaking as he smoothed the earth. "Rest, old friend," he whispered. They reached Willow Creek by dusk, a sleepy town of clapboard and lamplight. At a sagging inn, Old Bess handed them a key and cornbread, her eyes kind. That night, Clara lay beside Caleb, her head on his chest, his heartbeat her anchor. "Are we safe?" she asked. "Not yet," he said, "but we're free." She smiled, tears falling. "That's enough." Twist as they slept. A letter slipped under the door, sealed with crimson wax. Clara opened it at dawn, her face paling. "My sister," she whispered. "She's alive. She's here, in the West." Caleb took her hand. "Then we find her." Outside, the snow fell soft, a new journey dawning, one not of running, but of seeking, together.